Think you've seen everything the Nintendo 64 has to offer? Think again. This month for Cartridge Club, we're playing one of the Nintendo 64's most underrated adrenaline-fueled games, Sin and Punishment. It's a wild rail shooter that most gamers miss, but we're here to break it down and give our thoughts. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll find out why this hidden gem deserves a spot in your retro collection.
I will say, dude, I want to point one thing out about Sin and Punishment. The voice acting is trash.
Thinking of revenge?
I lost Kachua. Now it's Achi's turn to lose something.
It's terrible, bro. You want to like it. You want to like it because you like the characters and you want to have them like kind of like display their tones in the same way that probably the story was written, but they just do not capture the tone of the story or just the themes of the game at all. It just kind of sounds like some goofy guys making fun of what the game was supposed to be about.
Yeah,
which sucks because like normally you would watch, like, let's say you watched an anime, right? If you watched an anime, normally sometimes you can go like, oh, the English voice acting sucked. Let me go listen to the actual Japanese dub and then see what maybe the Japanese voice actors intended for the game to resonate with you with in terms of the inflections and the tone of the delivery of lines. We didn't get that. We got the cheesy English lines anyway, so it was a little goofy for sure.
It's funny that you mentioned that because when I was playing, I was like, I could tell this took a lot of Evangelion influence, and it seems like it's trying to take itself seriously. But because the voice acting is so bad, it seems like a parody of it instead. And I know that's not what they're going for because the story's serious. But with the voice acting, it's like, oh Christ, how did you miss the mark that bad? Thankfully, the gameplay makes up for it.
Occasionally, you know, like sometimes when the dialogue and voice acting is so bad, it's kind of endearing and charming, kind of like Resident Evil. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's unfortunate because the game is pretty good. A question I have is, given that this came out, and I don't know why I didn't look this up, but given that it was originally Japan only, did they later like dub this game, or how come the audio is in English?
I think it just straight up was in English.
Yeah, it just was in English.
Isaac, did you play the Japanese version on your Nintendo 64?
So I had a English reproduction, or I shouldn't even say English reproduction. It was just a reproduction copy that was fitted to fit in Japanese 64s or American 64s. But it was the same straight up ROM that was loaded onto the cartridge. And there's no Japanese dub as far as I'm aware. I kind of wish there was. Kind of going back to earlier how Leo was pointing out that there's a lot of influence from anime like Evangelion, and you would think that they would at least have some sort of original cut, but the original cut, at least as far as I'm aware, is the goofier English translation, quote unquote. It just seems like even a couple of lines sound like, okay, that's supposed to be a grown woman, but I could tell that's a little kid on the mic. All right, so let's go into it. My background with this game, why the other two fellows right now might have said that like I should talk about it right now, is I did try to buy this game quite a few years going to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. So when we would go to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, that was one of the games that was usually on my list for our first couple years. And we've been going to that expo for around 10 years. I didn't ever really see it in person on a Japanese physical cartridge. It wasn't until that I got it on a reproduction cartridge at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. But being that I did get eventually some form of manner of playing it on a physical console, I played the majority of it during COVID for the first time and played through it, beat it, and loved it, and it became one of my favorite N64 games. Playing it now, after I have kind of become less so strict on how much time and hours I sink onto a game in one time, it was actually kind of cozy to be able to play this run and gun on-rail shooter type game. The game is just visually pretty impressive for its time. It's an N64 game that plays and feels more like something that you would expect of something on the Dreamcast, or maybe even something on the PS1 or the Sega Saturn, something like that. It's an on-rail shooter where you play as these two characters that are basically fighting against these things. I had to look this up too because I didn't know this, even though I played this game years ago. There's these monsters called ruffians. I guess they farmed them, and it's super gory to get into some shock factor. I guess they were growing these creatures to eat them, And then eventually they rebelled against them, and there's these just monsters that are coming out and attacking the Earth. So you got these two cops kind of characters that have these guns that also turn into swords, and you're in an on-rail shooter kind of like Star Fox, and you're going around and shooting them. And then one of the characters, without going too much into details, starts to find out some situations that have him linked to the ruffians. But what I really like about the game is that this is the type of game that I think exceeds the console, and it was also limited by the console. The console is the N64. If you know what I'm talking about, it has that banana looking controller where it looks like a W like this, right? So you had to make some sacrifices. You had to use the control stick if you wanted to have the best aiming. But in order to do the best aiming, usually people are used to using their right hand. You had to move your hand to the left. So you were using the D-pad and your right hand on the control stick. All of that being said, the game has some really intuitive controls. The levels will teach you how to play. The levels will teach you, hey, maybe you should try something different, like using your sword attack instead of your gun attack all the time. Hey, maybe you should try dodging instead of just running the whole time. Hey, maybe you should have switched types of guns. Maybe one of them that is locking on is going to be weaker, and maybe one of them is going to be stronger. All that being said, I personally love Sin and Punishment. I think it's a very good time. If you have the eShop's virtual console on the Nintendo Switch with the expansion pass, it's right there. Like we said, even though it's a Japanese exclusive game originally on console, it has English voice acting, albeit a little on the goofier side, but it makes for a very good story with anime-esque looking characters who are just going through kind of a grim plot. Like I said, I don't want to go into spoilers, but it's a good time if you are into on-rail shooters and you want to play a little hidden gem that's on the 64 that we didn't get in the States. Yeah, that's Sin and Punishment for me. I'll go ahead and pass it on back. I'm guessing we'll probably throw it back to Sam last because he's the one who chose this game. I'll throw it to Leo. I'll throw it to Leo right now.
I think you got 3 minutes starting now. I will play this noise whenever you're at 3 minutes, but you can wrap it up after the 3 minutes.
We got a yapometer now?
Yeah.
All right. So the thing about this game is that, as Isaac indicated, its strength is not in the story, or at the very least, the lore might be good. The story itself is questionable, and there's not very much character development to speak of, but gameplay is what really gets it. And we all played it on the Switch Virtual Console experience expansion pack. I forgot what it's called. And the thing about that is I do not have an N64 controller because hot take, that is one of the worst controllers ever made. I know that the meme is, it expects you to have 3 hands. And I also know that's not true. But with this game, even when I was playing it with the whole 2-hand thing, I'm like, is it expecting me to switch back and forth between the stick and the D-pad? Like, just, yeah.
Sorry. I don't mean to cut it in, Leo, but like, don't you guys think this game would have done so much better if it let you do controller mapping?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That said,
100%.
I did get used to it, and it does become intuitive after a while, with one caveat. And it's not the game's fault. This is just muscle memory from centuries, decades of gaming. And that's that if I would pause the game, then come back to it like 5 minutes later, I would automatically just go to the analog stick for movement, and it's actually the D-pad that's mapped to movement. And that's something I kept on having to go, oh yeah, let's get back to D-pad for movement. But beyond that, the game does control really well. It's really fun. I'm going to give it that. Based on pure fun factor, it is one of the best, if not the best, N64 game that I've played. Because the guys know this about me. I'm not the biggest N64 person in the channel. If anything, out of the 5 of us, I would be number 5 ranked out of 5 as far as N64 lovability goes. That said, this is the sort of game that makes me go like, oh, maybe I should check out more of the library, because the developer Treasure also did Mischief Makers, another one that I've been actually very interested in checking out. And I know
try
that
it sometime.
Yeah, I've given it a shot for like 5 minutes, but nothing like a deep dive like this, where I've actually gone in and played it all the way through. Save scumming, I'm not gonna lie, but I did beat it, and the entire time I was like, oh, dang, I suck at this, but I'm gonna give it another shot. This is really fun, and it's just the sort of game that, like, it makes you kind of question, like, why don't they make stuff like this anymore? And with Isaac's history with this game, where he's talking about like, oh, it's this anime style game, but it's really arcadey. I'm like, I've always kind of said it, like, this to Isaac is what Bulk Slash is to me. It's the sort of game that makes you go, damn, I want more of this type of thing. We need more of these types of games nowadays. The sorts that like could almost like it makes you go like it's in the top 5 of the library that it's on, but it just doesn't get the recognition it deserves because it's overshadowed by the Sonics, by the Marios, by this, by that. It's like, no, you got to pull in for these underdogs because that's how we get these games to be made, you know?
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah.
I'm
Definitely
gushing
think it's a top game. Yeah. It's
yeah,
awesome.
like, so I'll say this to cap it off. My biggest complaints are the story is wonky, the characters aren't all that great, but the gameplay is what really makes up for it. And I am so glad that Sam picked this because now this is a game that I'm like, all right, I got to look for a cartridge of this one. I'm going to add this to my N64 collection now. All right, I'll cap it off there. I'll pass it over to Nick now because I believe Sam's going to be going last.
So I really enjoyed what I played of this game. I'm going to agree with Isaac. The visuals are very good for the system. I think that as Isaac mentions, it definitely replicates a Dreamcast game, maybe even like an early GameCube game. Even makes me wonder if did this game require the expansion pack?
I don't believe it did.
I don't think
That's
so. No.
impressive.
Yeah, I don't think it did because when I got it originally, I didn't have an expansion pack yet.
60 FPS.
So I really enjoyed the
Good
game.
luck getting 20 FPS out of this system.
I know, yeah. I really enjoyed the game. The gameplay itself is phenomenal. I kept comparing this game to Star Fox 64 just because obviously it's on the console. Star Fox 64 is probably the most well-known, on-rail shooter. Maybe in general.
That and like Pokemon Snap are like the on-rail shooters of the 64.
Definitely. I kept comparing it to Star Fox 64, and honestly, it's a definitely harder Star Fox 64 in my opinion. Both games are great. However, Sin and Punishment definitely emphasizes that punishment. I was playing on normal. I don't know about you guys, and I was having some difficulty, man. Like, I think I'm solid at video games, but like I kept dying in some situations.
This game is hard as hell.
Yeah, it's hard. Definitely something that I know Leo and Isaac touched upon was the controls. I got used to it eventually, kind of how Leo mentioned. I kept going back and forth between the analog and the D-pad. And then I had to remind myself, well, it probably plays better on an actual N64 controller, even though the N64 controller is controversial. And I think it's a pretty poor controller as well. When it works, it kind of works well. But I had kept reminding myself, like, it's, not made for the Switch. But nonetheless, I thought it was a pretty good experience overall. I didn't get as far as I'd hoped. It was kind of hard for me to get into it a little bit, but I did enjoy it from what I played of it. And it makes me a little sad that it didn't come out in North America at the time it did. I'm happy that it's on the eShop, and I'm definitely going to look for a repro of this game, similar to how Leo mentioned. I
want to get the original copy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Nick, you can have my repro, bro, because I bought the real one at Laughing Crow.
Hey,
so you can have my repro, dog.
Appreciate it, dude.
For sure.
Your face had that thumbs up. I don't know if y'all saw it.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Is this what cues it?
I don't know.
I don't know because
we saw that earlier in the pre-show, and I was tripping now.
That said, overall, I highly recommend the game if you guys haven't tried it. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Sam.
All right. Yeah. I initially chose the game. I'm on 16:06. I'm timing myself, so 19 minutes. I will say the first thing off the bat, I'm going to a little speed run it. The story, I don't know what the heck was going on, man. There were times where I thought I was understanding it until I didn't. Every other cutscene was like, Saki! And I'm like, what is going on, dude? The characters look different. They evolved into this other thing, and I don't know what the heck was going on, but I will say that the gameplay was crazy, dude, like in a great way. It was hard, but I don't know if there's any other game that did what this game was doing before it. Like,
yeah,
it
totally
kind of did like twin stick shooting without it doing twin stick shooting in a way, because you had to move. It felt different than a shmup, and in certain scenarios, I will say that it tried to do a little bit too much, not in a bad way, but in a fun way. Like there was some stages where it was like it wasn't platforming, but they're like side scrolling, and like things rotating. It was like a lot of stuff was going on that I didn't think were going to happen. There were like parallaxing stages. There's a bunch of stuff going on.
They worked with their limitations.
Yeah,
That's Treasure. They love experimenting with weird stuff. Like they never do sequels. They just go off the rails within their own games.
They're gonna edge you. They're gonna make you one game that you really like, and then they're gonna be like, "No, you're not gonna see that again."
Yeah, no, yeah, and like they rarely ever have sequels. Sorry to interrupt, Sam. Like the only one that I could think of is Advanced Guardian Heroes off the top of my head. How that was a sequel to Guardian Heroes, and I guess Sin and Punishment Star successor. So I just broke my own rule. But was that actually made by Treasure?
I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll look later.
I know.
Nick, pull up that video of the Sin and Punishment Star successor fact check.
With the gorilla.
I think, what was I going to say?
You were talking about parallax scrolling and how they were
I did a lot of different things that I didn't like anticipate the game was going to happen. It was fun. I was gonna say this with the expansion pack, Leo. The game I think runs at 60 frames per second on the original hardware.
Is it 60? I want to say it was 30.
That's crazy.
Like I will say it ran very smooth. But are we sure it was 60? Like
I think it runs at 60 without
Resident
the
fact
pass,
checker,
bro. We're gonna get a fact checker here, bro. I swear I looked up a little bit of it, and I swear I saw something that runs at 60. I don't know if it talked about the Switch Online version, but it ran at 60, and I remember it talking about it didn't need the expansion pass.
If it is, and that is insane because the N64, honestly, that whole generation of consoles, that's where we saw the shift from 60 FPS to 30 and sub FPS, especially with 3D titles.
Well, a lot of the Nintendo game ran at 60 FPS. Like
can you imagine how hard that game would be?
Smash actually did, yes.
Smash 64
can you imagine how hard that
60.
game would be with frame drops? Like if that game had frame drops, that would be impossible.
Nick's got it.
It does run at 60 FPS.
That 64,
is
insane.
Dude. Super Mario 64 runs at 60 frames per second.
I don't believe Super Mario
Smash 64 runs at 60 frames per second. I'm not sure, but I think the Nintendo 64 like first party stuff like ran well.
I don't know because you also got stuff like the Zelda games, which like they didn't run terribly, but they were not optimized either.
No, those ran like at 12 frames at some point.
If I remember correctly, the N64 was actually, in terms of the processor at the time, it was the strongest in the generation, but it was very limited by the RAM and cartridge space.
Yes.
So that's like the discrepancy that you see. Yeah, like there are, I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure about Mario Kart, but I'm pretty sure it runs.
There's some games that run at least 30, and honestly, I'll take a stable 30 over an unstable 60.
Yeah, so it says Mario Kart is 30 FPS.
30, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the game, I didn't know that the Nintendo 64 had games like that. I guess that's the best. If I had to describe the game in a sentence, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
And overall, I loved the game. I loved it. I beat it like in 2 sittings. And I know we all went on Discord and we're playing it. And I was like, nah, bro, I already beat it.
Yeah, we were playing it together at some point. And
okay, so I looked
Leo
it up.
and Sam were all looking at like the last level. Or Sam already beat it, but Leo and I were basically hit the last level on the same night. We're just chatting through it.
I didn't want to spoil it for you guys. The freaking Evangelion.
Well, I beat it in COVID. I beat it in COVID and have no idea how I beat it in COVID. Like, because I beat it now with save states, and I beat it then without save states. And if I'm not mistaken, Sam, I think you just muscled through it without save states as well, right?
Yeah, I didn't use any saves. I mean, I used save states whenever I like finished playing for that day, but I didn't like, oh dang, I died. Let me go back to.
I definitely did that.
Save state. I didn't save scum. I did use save states, but I don't think I save scummed it. But
I started off not save scumming, but at some point I was like, oh, this game's hard.
They give
like
you
really
a bunch of freaking continues to the point where it wasn't all that freaking hard. And then every once in a while you hear, what did it say?
Get bonus.
Yeah, get bonus.
Saki.
But so then I think that's already all four of us. So then I think now we go into the segment where we all give it a
Grade.
letter rating and then we average it out and we place it on the board of the GameBois Cartridge Club freaking
Pantheon, whatever we want to call it.
tier list, Pantheon, whatever we call it. I guess I'll go first since we're already talking. I was thinking, or just to give a little background, the first game that we played was Kirby's Dream Land 3, and that all of us gave it a C. So it got a C. So that's kind of like what our palate cleanser was. I thought about giving it an S at certain points, but I think I am just going to give it a solid A. I think it's hard because there's so many games nowadays that are way better. So like whenever I played it, I'm like, this is annoying, right? But had I played it then, I don't know if I would have thought it was annoying. I would have been like, this is the GOAT. But because of that, I think I'm just going to solidly give it out an A is my choice. Now I'm going to move it on to Isaac.
So similar to Sam, this is one of my favorite 64 games. And I really wanted to put it in S, and I still kind of thought about putting it in S, especially because I wanted to kind of give it some buffer just in case someone put a B or lower in terms of when we're talking today. It's just to give it the solidified the A, but in that case, that means I really want to put it in A. I'm talking in terms of Cartridge Club when I'm putting it in an A. If I'm talking 64 library, I'd probably have it in my favorites. But if we're talking about Cartridge Club where we could really play anything, I got to have it exposed to anything and everything that we could possibly play on this channel. So I'm going to have to put it in A because as much as I want to put it in S, there is very much the possibility that there are several games that I like more than Sin and Punishment. Sin and Punishment is one of my favorite N64 games. It's one of my top 5 N64 games. However, I need to put it in A because I do need to recognize that it has a bit of a timed amount of flaws, given that it came out the year it came out. It's on the controller it has some mechanics that are really limited to what it was able to do on the console and the controller it had at the time. And that's not a knock against it. If anything, all of this stuff is just speaking how great it is for its time. It feels like a game that would be on a better console with better controls in a later time, but it just didn't reach that yet. That being said, I need to go play the sequel now that that one's on Wii and that one's on a better console. So we'll see. I put it in A. I put it in A and I pass it on to Leo.
I was actually about to put it in S. Then you brought up a very good point of we're not grading it as the N64 library. We're grading it in terms of our cartridge. I was like ready to put it in S. And then you said that. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. So now that we have that in mind, I think that A's also, it's hard because I don't want to just have it every episode be like, C, A. But it's like, it's funny how this one worked out because I agree.
I still don't know what Nick's going to give it.
And we had Cheetle, who was
Cheetle would have put
today.
it. He probably would have put it in D tier. Like he was not hating it, but he was frustrated. But yeah, I think A is a solid spot for this one. If I was to look at it as its own game, not just in the N64 library, like there is the small flaw of the whole story things, and this is an arcadey game, so story is not the biggest deal, but it is something to keep in mind. And with all that said, yeah, A. Now, I'm going to pass it on to Cheetle. I'm not joking. Nick, go on ahead.
Wait, Nick, did you even beat it?
I did not beat it, no.
So should he even rate it?
Null and void. Not joking. No, I think he should still get to.
Okay.
So I'm going to start off by saying that the on-rail shooter genre is not usually my thing. I did appreciate the game, and I whenever I try to rank a game, I try to put myself back in the era in which it was created. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and give it an A as well, just because I don't think I've played any Unreal.
Dude, what is your camera doing?
Wait, what's
I paid for Podcast Plus, boys. I got the premium podcast.
You got fireworks over there, bro.
It's a non-rail shooter going on in my background.
I don't know if I've played an on-rail shooter that is on par with this one. I think the on-rail shooter genre is a little bit, they don't make them as much anymore. But even so, I think it's still a really good time. And I'm excited to see where this one holds up, in the next couple months with the other games we play. I'm definitely giving it an A, though.
I heard that this game plays a lot like Kid Icarus Uprising.
I was getting some Panzer Dragoon vibes off this.
People in the chat, if you guys have played Sin and Punishment and want to look for another game, that's the game that I've seen on Reddit, and like a lot of people compare it to that. It plays very similar. Or if you hate it, if you hate Sin and Punishment, then avoid that game. But yeah, let us know in the chat, guys, if you played Sin and Punishment. If you did you like it? If you did not, are you gonna try it out? And have you ever even heard of this game? I don't know, man.
So are we settling for A tier on this one, or do we take Cheeto's hypothetical consideration into mind?
Hey,
if we're taking Cheeto's hypothetical, I'm changing mine to S to buffer it, bro.
So then
Cheeto
either way,
in
we end
here.
up in A then.
Also, I don't think we ever mentioned Cheeto's not here. Did we ever
he had
mention?
some
I don't think
personal
we
stuff
did.
going on, so
Yeah.
no,
so
we didn't mention it.
I think we should not take his grade into consideration.
Like I said, even if he did, he would have bumped it up anyways. So I think we end up in like the A minus tier anyways.
I think
going forward, if somebody's not here, we could ask them their opinion. But I think for today, we just go with the consensus of us four.
freaking Isaac's trolling with the fireworks, bro.
Isaac trolling, he would never.
Oh, you see, look, now it switched.
Dude.
What can I say? I'm patriotic today.
I think it's a good incentive to be like, if you want your grade to be taken into account, you got to show up for the pod.
That makes sense.
And then also, yeah, because then if it's like, if I hated a game so much and it's an F, and I'm like, bro, I'm not going to miss. I'm going to make sure everybody knows
That's
this game
fair.
sucked. I'm going to give it an F.
Okay.
And
all right,
that's what
so
I
it's
think,
solidified.
but yeah.
We are on A tier for Sin and Punishment and C tier for Kirby Dreamland 3. I forgot what it was called.
Kirby's Nightmare on Elm Street. Woo!
All right. And before we move on to the next segment, I'm the next person that gets to pick a game for the Cartridge Club. And for my choice, I also want to go with one that's on the Switch Online service on the expansion pack. And I'm going with Shinobi 3 on the Sega Genesis.
Oh, hell.
Okay, now hold on. This is on the Switch Online service, but I will say, if you have access to it, and I'm pretty sure Sam does, the way that I would recommend playing it is actually on the Nintendo 3DS. This is one of those games where it's 2D pixel art, but it does support the 3D mode. And normally I'm not a big fan of 3D, but when it comes to 2D pixel art, it is transformative. Like it actually enhances a lot of your immersion for that game, because you're only seeing the foreground and focus of the background. It's still all pixel art, but it just looks amazing. Yeah, the parallax scrolling is going to look amazing if you got that 3DS.
Shinobi 3, bro.
Shinobi 3.
I was actually...
If you guys want to play along,
that was the one actually I was going to pick when it was my turn, Leo. So I'm glad you did.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
You've got a free one now.
I was stuck between two. I wanted to pick a Genesis game, and that was probably one I was going to go with. But I'm excited to play with it.
Hey, what happened? I thought you told us a little behind the curtain. I thought you told us you were going to pick Sonic R.
Oh, bro, Leo, now he's going to pick Sonic R and he's going to make us all suffer, bro.
No, there's no way we could all play Sonic R. It would require...
I'm going to tell you like this, Nick. If we're not going to play Sonic R, I got to tell you now, bro, that game is cheeks, bro. Sonic feels like he's running on ice skates.
You guys are thinking about it wrong. You got to imagine that they're cars.
They made Mario Kart, bro.
No, bro. They made Mario all over the place. They're sliding all over the place.
It's objectively a bad game. I'll give it that. But if you know how to play it, it plays good. It plays good on the GameCube because the controller... I'm super nostalgic for it. That's probably why.
Run on some rollerblades on a banana peel. That's Sonic R, bro.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right. Are we ready for the next segment?
Yeah.
I will say, if you guys are watching on YouTube and this is the video you guys are watching, remember to smash that like button and hit that subscribe button and let us know why we suck in the chat and why this game is the greatest of all time and why your opinions are wrong and why Sam is the GOAT. And that is all. Okay, bye. I love you. Okay, so yes, that is part of Cartridge